Those children and their actions. There has to be something that sets them on the right track. What's the word I'm looking for?
Oh, maybe a consequence.
Let's talk about that.
All right.
Mama says namaste. Mama says namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh, yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama says namaste.
So we are excited about adding in more listener questions to the podcast and maybe having some shorter little nuggets here for you. I'm curating a survey and it's going to be going out this weekend. So on Friday, any of you who are on our newsletter list is going to get an email with a link to a survey where we want to hear from you on what you want to hear more of on the podcast. I do this every year, and based on your request last year, we've added a whole lot more of Juliet this year. And we want to make sure that this podcast is what feeds you. So if you have an idea for the podcast, if you have a question you'd like us to address, or if you have any other suggestions, we want to hear it. So you can go to mamasaysnamaste.com and hit that little contact and reach out. Or like I said, if you're on our email list, you will be getting a link to the survey on Friday.
Cool.
So, today's question has to do with consequences. How do we figure out what consequences to do for our children? I've talked a lot about natural consequences, and that's been a question that we've gotten. Well, how do I figure out what a natural consequence is?
Right. A lot of times as parents, we're kind of trying to deal with the way that we feel we were parented. And we're either bringing that into the relationship of the parenting game, or we're trying to avoid those things.
And do the exact opposite.
Opposite, right. And so, consequences, though, are something that we have to deal with. Our children are going to do things that are either going to be outside of the social norms or are going to be frustrating to us and just are not a good, timely situation to express the emotions when we're, riding down an escalator in a mall in public and trying to figure out what we're going to eat. I know everybody's hungry. But, those consequences, we need to understand. They help kids, I think, understand those barriers where there's that, the bathtub of boundaries with an ocean of love. Those consequences help kids understand, here's
the
what
barrier.
happens.
Yeah. Well, and so that's something that from a very young age, we have drilled into our kids. Every action, that's usually where I stop and wait for them to fill in the rest of the sentence.
There's a consequence.
Exactly. Every action has a consequence. And that can be bad or good. I want to drill into my kids. Every action has a consequence. What you reap, what you sow, you will reap. What you reap, you will sow.
That's right.
You reap what you sow.
You reap what you sow.
What you reap, you will sow. And so if you are sowing the seeds of, kindness and connection in your home, you will reap the benefits of that. If you're sowing the seeds of taking and dissent, then that's what you're going to reap the benefit of. And so what we've compiled is six points for how you can kind of create what your consequences are. And the first one you kind of touched on already. We want to use consequences, not punishment. There's a difference there. When we're talking about a consequence, we're talking about modifying the behavior, not just berating them for what they did.
Right. I mean, a lot of times berating them for what they did doesn't help them understand the why behind the action a lot of times. That natural consequence of, we wanted to go to the movie on time, and it took us a lot longer to get dressed and make our decision for clothes. So how can we a lot of times what we'll do with our girls in this type of situation is explain how we will protect ourselves against consequences, how we will make sure that we have alarms that wake us up so that we don't have the consequence of sleeping late. We have these things in place in our lives. And so just sharing them with your kids and being, yeah, I'm with you. There's consequences. If I don't feed you, you starve. That's the consequence. And so we have to give and take. And just helping your kids understand the unlocking to that world law, that natural law, is really valuable.
Yeah, and we've done this even as adults. I know for us, we have shared multiple times. One issue that we have had, especially when our kids were younger, has been forgetting shoes in the car, or forgetting shoes, period. And I have to say, we recognize that we have been guilty of this as well. We go barefoot a lot, and we oftentimes forget where our shoes are. We talk about dummy proofing that and making sure that we have our shoes by the door. If we know we're going to be leaving, we go ahead. Clara will even go so far as to make sure she just keeps them stay in the car, because that's about the only time we end up wearing them. And so we're trying to do these things to dummy-proof it. A natural consequence is when we go out and we forget our shoes, we could go, we're in Florida, we could probably get away with just going barefoot into a store or something.
And buy flip-flops.
But we don't. For the principle of it all, we don't go out and buy flip-flops. We don't go barefoot into the store when it says no shirt, no shoes, no service. We turn around. We say, we don't get to do what we were going to do.
Yeah, we did this on a big day one time.
Yes,
with a natural
we did.
consequence with Miss Juliet, who was super excited about getting her ears pierced, and we were all excited. We were making a day of it. We had lunch planned. We had a lot going on with other people too, with family members. But this shoe thing was something that we've been working on for a year and a half, 2 years. This wasn't something new. And poor Juliet was so excited. She's all dressed up. With no shoes, and didn't say anything until we're pulling into the place to get her ears pierced.
45 minutes away from our house.
Yeah, we were getting her ears pierced, and we said, you know what? What do you think the natural consequence should be for this? I bet if you didn't get your ears pierced, because that's part of what we need to do to go into a store. We have to have ourselves together. We're not going to be able to go in and get those ears pierced today. That's a natural consequence of things that have happened. As much as I want, I've given you information on how to dummy proof yourself with the shoes, but it's going to require action on your part to make that a reality. And oh boy, that was a hard conversation to have, but one that she recognized as something that she could take control over. It wasn't happening to her. She could take control over that situation by managing her time and the way she handled it.
Right. Yeah, that was a very disappointing day for poor Juliet. But again, we looked at, we had to use what is the natural consequence of this. And in that situation, it was an inconvenience for everybody, but it wasn't the end of the world. We could easily go and get her ears pierced on another day. And so we made that happen, and she learned a valuable lesson, and she's actually not forgotten her shoes since then.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I was just thinking about that she has not. And so those are those things that are, as a parent, you see that and you want to say, let's just skip this one. But a lot of times, if it's a consistent issue that you're working it with, striking while the iron is hot, while the idea is there and present and the emotions are there, if you can make that connection to if-then, it can really change their long-term approach towards things. And they can start really taking responsibility for themselves.
The more they start to think ahead of every action has a consequence, they think about what those actions are they want to do. All right, the second one is making consequences task-oriented. And I love this because you can give a kid a quick task for growth and redemption. It's not a matter of, I have to, I think sometimes when we can berate our kids, it's almost like I hear that inner dialogue of, I'm awful, I'm just a horrible person, I just never get things right. And I'm not saying change who you are, but I can give a quick task of redemption. And some of these, when I talk about doing a task of redemption, it may be that you've got two kiddos who have been fighting with each other, and it comes to a head, and you've got a breaking point of fighting where they're to the extreme, and then the consequence for one of them is to write the other one a letter and apologize. and write it down. And what are we doing there? Well, we're getting some great writing skills in. So we're doing the writing. We're working on how to finesse the words that we say in our language. We're sitting and thinking about it because it's written down. It's not something that we're just saying. So we're pursuing a task to rectify the relationship that we had damaged.
Right.
And in doing that, we give a quick solution to something that offers, some breathing space for both parties and allows them to sit with their thoughts and to choose how they want to show up again. A quick task can do that. I mean, we oftentimes when we're sitting out here, we're looking at who's going to contribute in the family, and we look over and we have 2 kids kind of clean things up and 1 kid sitting and looking at a book, playing with a cat, whatever, and we, natural consequence of idleness while everyone else is working. Hey, babe, dishes are dirty. And they run over and they have to clean the dishes. And so it's a quick task as a natural consequence. I'm not going to sit there and have to say, hey, you lazy bum, you're not doing anything. Look at everybody else and what we're doing. No. Oh, hey. You're available. Here's your consequence. Here's what you can do. And the kids know if they're not making themselves busy when we're cleaning, we will make them busy.
Well, it's just the social awareness that everybody else is doing something that is helpful or productive. Should I contribute or not? And sometimes they're just flexing that muscle of, I just want to feel what it's like to not. And we ask them, will you please give us a hand with blankety blank? And it's not because you're sitting there idle. It's just, I see you there. And we have that as an open rule in our family.
Mm-hmm. All right, a third one then is to make them time specific. This is a big one. Don't keep your consequences open-ended, but give a clear explanation of a start and then the finish for moving on. I see this all the time, and I actually talked with a specialist who works with kids that have really been struggling with behavior issues, and he said, don't bankrupt your kids. And what he means by that is you get kids who are, really acting out and acting up, and you go, that's it. You're grounded for a week. And then something else happens during that week. Okay, that's it. You're grounded for a month. And then another thing, you're grounded for the rest of your life. Like, where do you go? When you have your consequences so big and broad or so, so extreme for an infraction, what happens is that you bankrupt the consequences. You don't have anything else to take. All of a sudden, I've taken, you're grounded. You don't have a phone. You aren't allowed to hang with your friends, and you're still being a jerk. Well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And so think about a quick task for redemption, because we are looking at helping our children with better tools to navigate so they have better consequences. We're not looking at punishing them. We're looking at helping them to learn how to get out of that, not so great situation again.
Right.
So make them short. That's why I love the idea of writing a letter when it comes to, being a jerk to family members and things like that, because when we can write a letter, it can give us a quick redemption, and it's not like grounded for a week. We're now, okay, shoot, I have to cancel the family plans we had. we have to do all of these other things. So really think about what's something that's time specific that offers some quick redemption versus making your child sit in the stew of something they did for a month when it was a really quick thing they didn't think about to begin with.
Right. Well, and that leads us into the fourth one, where it's make the punishment or the consequence related to the behavior. If they are, if they're having a hard time interacting with their siblings, then, separating them for a little while is okay, but it's important to help them learn how to enter into a relationship with a sibling and give them an opportunity to practice that. Mm-hmm. And so, giving them hey, after you're done doing the dishes, I want you and your sisters to work together to vacuum the floor. Mm-hmm. And it gives them an opportunity to try to interact in a positive way.
Yeah. And so we don't want to double dip. And, I so remember this being a situation when Ellie and Juliet were little and they were getting into a fight. And Ellie hit Juliet and then turned around to go up the steps in our house, in our Nashville house, and she hit Juliet, and then she goes and she completely trips up the stairs, face plants, falls face first, and Juliet in her little 2-year-old voice goes, "Karma." But at that point we talked about it, and I didn't need to punish Ellie anymore. Ellie got hurt. She got hurt more than she hurt her sister.
Yeah.
And so, and it was completely of her own accord. I had nothing to do with this, but we could sit there and talk about it and say, boy, that was kind of, really quick. You got a natural hit back. Like, you didn't like that. Do you think your sister liked being hit by you? Okay.
Right.
Well, you just got a really quick consequence. So, let's reflect and move on. And so we reflected and moved on. I didn't need to take this kid who was already in pain, already feeling bad about hitting her sister, and then take a further punishment that's just going to add more division and shame in our household.
Right.
So, make them short and sweet, and don't double dip. If a natural consequence has happened, let it happen. I remember my mom did this when I was in high school, and I made a stupid decision. We were at a 24/7, dry campus sort of high school, obviously, because you aren't supposed to be drinking under 21 anyway. And of course, I might have skirted the boundaries of that a little bit. And so anyway, I got in trouble, and I got in trouble at school, and I got detention, I got suspension, I got community service, all for a wild time during spring break. And I was mortified. I was absolutely appalled. The school, it was a private school, and they really beat the consequences in. I had, I was at risk of being dropped from the Honor Society. They wanted to drop my GPA. There was all kinds of stuff that was happening at school, and I was beating myself up over it. Those days I was suspended and not going to school, did my mom punish me and make me write a whole long essay on how horrible I was? Heck no. She was trying to bring me out of the funk. She's like, hey, you've punished yourself enough. It's okay. Let's go shopping.
Yeah.
She recognized the punishment had happened. So, there are times where the world's going to beat up your kid in whatever way. It's going to be the friend that, talked harshly to them and hurt their feelings. It's going to be them getting the speeding ticket. It's going to be the school that's doing the punishment. There are other ways that they are going to get natural consequences. So make sure that you as a parent are recognizing when they've paid their dues, and then helping them to find the growth in it versus the punishment and shame.
And we communicate this to our girls. We say, listen, my punishments and my consequences are very, very sweet compared to the real world.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is help you understand how the real world works before you get out there. Because it's full of consequences. If you run a red light, mm-hmm. you endanger other people's lives. And that can have an impact that can last your entire life. Mm-hmm. And so those consequences can really be important to see and understand.
Yeah. And again, I feel like I kind of went off course on there on what it was making it related to the original behavior too. We want to look at, if we have a kid that's acting out and being wild and crazy because we just had donuts, then that's an easy association. And we can say, okay, hey, donuts equal behavior that is not helpful for you. So, this shows us that we're going to refrain from donuts. We're not going to grab donuts the next time, or we're not going to come to the donut party, because the donut party is a perfect storm for us to leave frazzled and fried.
But we unpacked that with our girls.
Right.
Did you notice how
right.
your whole energy changed after you had gotten some of that in your system? And everybody's energy changed. So just helping them to see what led up to the consequence.
Mm-hmm. All right, and number 5 is don't cancel special events as a consequence. This one is hard, but, we've had this situation where we're like, do we cancel Christmas? Because our 2-year-old was, acting out so awful and so horribly the day before, and we felt like, okay, well, we have to have some kind of consequence, but then on the flip side, it's like, well, do we cancel Santa? Well, we had to take into account, how many other people are a part of this scenario. Mm-hmm. Well, we've got all of the extended family. This was the first grandchild. There was a whole lot of pressure on this child to be the light of the day and everything else. And, us canceling Christmas for a whole family because of one child who's maxed out. And when we really look at the reality of it, she's socialized out, and that was us as parents not directing it well. That didn't make sense. And so, be careful about taking those big events, the one time that the family is all getting together or something like that, maybe those are not the consequences that you are doing. Maybe you're looking for, getting your ears pierced was a big event for our daughter, but it could have been done on any other day.
Yeah.
And that's why we were able to go ahead and take that away. But if we've got something where we've got a major consequence, but there's a big event coming up, I caution on that and just look at, is it worth it if it's meaning that this is something that then becomes a punishment for a large group of people, not just for your one child.
Right,
because again, you're lacing in there that level of shame on that child that she's just ruined it or he's just ruined it for everybody.
Right. That's what I was going to say. You're spreading the shame around.
All right. And that leads us to the sixth one again. And it is that reminder that consequences are about learning. It's a natural effect of their actions. So if they don't like what that effect is, they can learn a new approach. That's our goal. So we want to enforce that proactively. And Nathan, you've done this a lot, like taking the kids into the glass shops when they were little.
Oh, yeah. Well, like we would just do tests and give them an opportunity to see where that line was before they wanted to break it. So like when they were really little and they had a hard time keeping their hands to themselves, I would take them to a place like, they always want to go into the gift shops to see all the little trinkets, but it's like taking two whirling dervishes in there. So I would play a game with them. So I wouldn't get mad, and they could be in control of the situation. I said, we play a game. It's a look but don't touch. And as soon as you touch, we got to go. I'm going to grab you. I'm going to tap you on the shoulder. I'm going to say, you're it. And we got to go outside and talk about the game and redo it. And so it just kind of created this situation to where when they wanted to shut it off, even if it was for fun, they could initiate that consequence. But it gave them power of time on how long they wanted to be in there. And we talk about that. If one of them touched it just to see, just to test, look at me and touch it, like, all right, let's giddy up and go. And we would head out and we'd say, okay, well, we can do it again. We only lasted 2 minutes in there this time. Do you think we can go further? And just giving them the idea of, I have control over my impulses. I have control over myself. And and sometimes, we make these decisions and we learn these lessons in the heat of the moment rather than making it fun and more and enjoyable. Okay, here's the natural consequence of this situation. So it doesn't make future experiences really negative.
It's such a great thing to add. Be proactive. We spend more time training our dogs than we do our children. And yet our children, it's not that we're forcing and training them to be and act a certain way that they have to be and conform to. It's we're helping them be the best that they can be. And that's helping them be a look at how to bring out the best in every scenario. And so the more that they can practice, the more they can be proud of how they show up, and the more that they can learn that best interaction with others.
Right.
All right, so our 6 ones here. Use consequences, not punishment. Make consequences task-oriented. Make them time-specific. Make them related to the original behavior. Don't cancel special events as a consequence. And consequences are about learning. Those are our 6 points for natural consequences for this week. So I hope that helps to kind of put a frame around how you can do natural consequences. And I encourage you to ask your kids sometimes what they think the natural consequence would be. We've had our kids give themselves worse consequences because they recognize that they messed up and they're seeing a consequence that I didn't see. So if you're feeling really stumped on a natural consequence, sometimes asking your kids, you would be surprised at what they show up with or what they may say. So remember, again, this is a learning process. We are all learning, and we as parents have natural consequences that happen all the time. And that's an opportunity for us to share that with our kids and to let them know, hey, look, X plus Y equals Z for me. And, this one was a great one. And this one, I've learned my lesson here. The more we can share and narrate and explain how we are coping through life, how, not just coping, I don't want to use that word, how we're thriving and how we're flowing in life by what tools we use. When we mess up, we accept our consequences. And what do we do with that? Do we sit there in resentment, feel like we're a victim, think, why does this always happen to me? Or do we look at, what does this make possible? What have I learned from this? And how can I go better or do better from this?
Right.
And how can we celebrate?
how
The uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Namaste.
2, 3. Up with the rising sun, already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, and you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up and be all the change that I want to see in this world. Boys and girls, you gotta have to stand up to be free. Namaste in your heart. Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama says namaste.